Tonight, the extraordinary rotating rocket. Could it be the future of space travel? Hello and welcome to the future.
Visions of life in tomorrow's world.
Tonight, the craft that may herald a revolution in space. It's designed to be both reusable and affordable. It goes up like a rocket and comes down like a helicopter.
Plus, it's being held as a wonder drug. Could it save arthritis sufferers from a lifetime of pain?
And the quest to bring an extinct animal back to life, breeding the first quagga in 100 years.
It's almost exactly 30 years since America won the race to put humans on the moon. It was a phenomenal achievement, but cost billions of dollars. Now, a new space race is underway to develop an affordable rocket that can launch satellites cheaply and one day might take all of us up there. One of the frontrunners is a truly revolutionary spacecraft called the Roton. Lindsay Fallow counts down to liftoff in the Californian desert.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Ever since we first blasted into orbit, rocket scientists have been trying to come up with a cheaper way of journeying into space. Until now, there's been no easy answer. One of the reasons that space travel is so expensive is that traditional rockets, which cost billions of dollars, can only be used once and are then thrown away. Coming up with a rocket you can use again and again seems an impossible dream, but here in a hangar in the remote Mojave Desert, they think they've got one. It's the Roton. And it's been designed by a small band of privately funded individuals who, in taking on the big boys like NASA, have thrown away the rule book. Their radical new design has 3 key steps to success. The key to getting your rocket into space cheaper is to make it incredibly light. Now, conventional rockets were made out of aluminium, but this one is made out of a carbon graphite composite, a lot like your tennis racket, but even lighter. The engine design is even more radical. It uses kerosene and liquid oxygen rather than traditional rocket fuel. And instead of using heavy pumps to feed the 300,000 pounds of fuel to the engine, it uses a spinning motion. The fuel comes out from a tank in the centre of the rocket to the 72 combustion chambers around the edge. This is one of those 72. Now, when the bottom of the rocket spins round, the centrifugal force literally throws the fuel and the oxygen into the mixing tank, and then it blasts out the other side. There may be 72 of these, but this is a pretty big rocket, and these are going to have to be really impressive. And with rockets, nothing can be left to chance. Here at the test site in the desert, each of the combustion chambers is undergoing rigorous testing, the engineers gradually building up the burn time to the crucial 6 minutes it will take to get into orbit. Today, the target is 8 seconds. During the test, the centre of the canister will be hotter than the surface of the sun, so after they've rigged it, the test site has to be cleared. It's about 30 minutes to go till the test and they're just making the final preparations, but because it's so dangerous we've all got to go inside now, so we're just going to go and watch from the control room.
Pyro, 02.5. Ready, Buzz? I'm ready. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Off.
Remember, this is just one of the 72 combustion chambers being tested, and the force of the blast is enough to shake the camera. Even if they get their rocket into space, the team also have to get it back down to Earth in one piece after it's released its satellite. And to do that, their radical idea is to turn their rocket into a helicopter. The rocket uses its rotors to glide gently back down to Earth, slowing down from several times the speed of sound to around 60 miles an hour. Then just before it reaches the ground, tiny rocket engines on the tips of the rotor blades will be fired, allowing the roton to hover for a few seconds before touching down gently. This test vehicle has a simulator, so I'm about to come the closest I'm ever likely to get to fulfilling my lifetime ambition of becoming an astronaut. This is Brian, the test pilot. And Brian, you're about to take me through a landing, aren't you?
That's correct, and here we go. The vehicle's now at 8,000 feet. We'll start a gentle turn to the east, where we're going to go look for the Mojave Airport, and there it is.
And there it is indeed.
We're coming down about 2,500 feet per minute, which is a fairly slow rate of descent. We're 60 knots ground speed, so we're keeping up the traffic on the highways. The only thing that's unusual about this approach is it's fairly steep. It's about 45 degrees.
Wow, so we're coming in like that.
As opposed to a conventional airliner, it comes down at 3 degrees.
Yeah.
And we'll just make small corrections to keep that in the crosshairs.
Yeah, because you're just making tiny little adjustments on the stick here.
And that's generally true of anything in the aviation world, is just take small corrections.
Don't do anything drastic.
We're passing 4,000 feet. At 3,000 feet, we will start powering up the tip rockets, and we will transition to a powered landing, and that will allow a very gentle and soft touchdown for the vehicle. And accomplish that with the expenditure of only a couple of 100 pounds of fuel, which is important because it's a single-stage to orbit vehicle. We don't want to carry an awful lot of extra baggage if it's not necessary.
Here comes the runway.
So here's about 50 feet, and we got the tip rockets coming on. We adjust the nose attitude, and we target the intersection, and there's touchdown.
There we are. Wow, that was absolutely incredible. Now, you've flown all sorts of things, haven't you? So what's it, I mean, to be in something like this, do you really think it's going to fly? What's it like?
I'm very confident this will fly, and we're excited to be part of the Roton test program.
Not everyone is so optimistic, but the Roton team are confident that they'll win the new space race. The Roton rocket could be in space as early as next year, and the company hopes to be doing regular satellite launches by the year 2001. They're still looking for $100 million, so if you want to go into space and have a few million to spend, then you can book your ticket on the Roton now.
In the next few months, the Roton team will begin testing the rocket's helicopter descent system. And of course, we'll keep you up to date with how they get on.
Now, it's a disease affecting over 500,000 people in Britain. It can strike anyone at any time and leave them almost paralysed by pain and stiffness. It's rheumatoid arthritis. And only now are scientists beginning to unravel the mystery of what causes it. As Anya Sitaram reports, a new drug may be about to offer patients relief from a life of suffering.
19 years ago, Tanya Ilbury's life changed literally overnight.
I was 20 years old, very fit, used to run for an athletic club. I went to bed one Saturday and woke up on a Sunday morning with swollen fingers, swollen hands. On the Monday, my knees and ankles had swollen up. Went to the hospital, and that was where they found out that I had arthritis. I was quite shocked because I always thought that arthritis was an old person's disease. I'd never known anybody young having it.
Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease. That means the body's immune system, which normally fights off disease, has somehow been confused and starts to attack the body's own tissue. In rheumatoid arthritis, that gives rise to painful, stiff and swollen joints. No one yet knows what causes the disease, but what is known is it can strike at any stage of a person's life, and it's incurable.
There are drugs available to help rheumatoid patients. They range from painkillers to chemotherapy drugs, which suppress the immune system, through to steroids. If given early, they can ease the symptoms, but most of the drugs deal with the effects of the disease rather than the cause. And for patients like Tanya, there can be unpleasant side effects.
I've been on most arthritic drugs that are available on the market. The steroids are the only thing that have kept me moving around. I've put on 5 stone in weight since I've been on them. And so that's a vicious circle because it's more weight on your joints, and so your joints get worse, and then they up your steroids to try and counteract that. I have to take them because I have to be able to move. If I didn't take steroids, I'd just be a blob in bed, basically. nice and slim, but not being able to do anything. And with 2 young children and a husband, and me, I want to live my life.
But Tanya was given the chance to try this new drug, codenamed CA2 or anti-TNF. The improvement in her condition was almost immediate.
Literally, I had the infusion one day, and the next day I could get out of bed without pain, could move around. My son was about 2 at the time. I could lift him up without even thinking about it.
Rather than treating the symptoms of the disease, in developing the new CA2 drug, researchers have studied the chain of chemical reactions in the body that cause rheumatoid arthritis. What they found is that one chemical, TNF, seems to play a crucial part in the disease.
If you added antibodies that completely took away, blocked TNF, then the whole subsequent cascade of reactions that results in other molecules being recruited was somehow interrupted.
Tanya is not on the drug anymore. When she tried it, it was at such an early stage of development, she was only allowed 2 infusions. Now, though, it's in a final trial. Every 6 weeks, patients like Joan Deal come to the Charing Cross Hospital in London to receive an infusion. She's helping doctors confirm whether the drug really helps patients or whether they simply think it's going to help them.
If all goes to plan, the drug should become available in Britain by the end of the year, and some patients like Tanya can't wait. But although it's being hailed as a new wonder drug, some rheumatologists are sounding a word of warning about potential side effects.
For instance, TNF stands for tumour necrosis factor, which occurs naturally in the body in small amounts. It was originally discovered when other scientists were looking for anti-cancer agents. So one concern is that removing TNF could mean patients develop cancer. But the risks are minimal, according to Professor Maney, who's researching the new drug.
Insofar as we understand what TNF does in normal health, it seems that it plays a very important part in the host defense to infections rather than cancer. Now, I think as far as side effects are concerned, patients who have this drug tend to get infections more readily than their brothers and sisters who are not on such drugs. But then these are minor infections, fortunately, by and large, and we are very used to dealing with this kind of drug in rheumatology because many of the drugs we use have very similar immunosuppressive effects.
Rather than worrying about the future, Tanya wants to enjoy the present.
I want to be moving today, now, with my children whilst they're young. I want to be able to sort of move around with my husband, go out and be as normal as we can be as a family. And in 20 years' time, my children will hopefully be doing their own thing, going their own way. It won't be so important for them to have a mum who can move about and, do things with them. You've always got to hope, otherwise you might as well just give up. If I thought that all my life consisted of was more steroids, I could become quite down about it. And all the time people are doing research, there's hope. But I certainly think that this anti-TNF has really must give people hope for the future. From what I've experienced, it was just wonderful. And, it might not work for everybody, but there's still that element of hope for everyone.
One anti-TNF drug is already approved for use in the United States, and the Arthritis Research Campaign say 2 drugs should become available in Britain later this year.
Coming up, taming the world's most dangerous oceans, how this unmanned craft could help make them a more predictable place.
And how scientists in South Africa are bringing an extinct animal back to life.
But first, good news about a pet we told you about a couple of months ago. You may remember Murphy, a 2-year-old cat who was operated on using a new material, which vets hoped would regenerate his skin. Murphy was suffering an appalling injury after being bitten in the stomach by another animal. His wound was so big that there was not enough skin to stitch the ends together. But luckily for Murphy, science stepped in to offer some hope. Anya Sitaram joined vet David Pearson whilst he operated on Murphy using a revolutionary new membrane harvested from the intestine of a pig. The clever thing about this membrane is that its natural collagen structure and growth factors are designed to encourage tissue to grow back evenly over the whole without leaving scar tissue. Back at home after the operation, Murphy was soon making good progress.
Before the operation, I thought we'd have to make a decision to have Murphy put to sleep. I didn't think there was any chance at all that Murphy would make it. Murphy got over the operation quite well. He spent a few days on painkillers and obviously had a collar on and a bandage to protect his stitches. He was very quiet for a few days, but made an excellent recovery.
6 weeks on, Murphy's wound is just a tiny hole for drainage. And 4 months after the operation, Murphy's completely recovered, with his fur grown back and no evidence of his terrible injury. Just as importantly, he's back to his boisterous self.
Oh yeah, I'm really happy with how Murphy's come through the operation. Before the operation, he was just like a statue of a cat, but he's just like a normal cat now, running after things and playing with string and that. I mean, I didn't think he'd ever get to be this well, but he has.
And the skin's already been used successfully to treat over 100 animals, among them an owl and a snake.
As we all know, predicting the weather is an uncertain business. It can just mean getting caught in a shower without an umbrella. But for many, like those at sea, it can be a lot more serious. Now, a scientist in New Zealand has invented a solar-powered weathercraft which could make all the difference to mariners caught in unexpectedly violent storms, like this one.
Conditions were horrendous. It was blowing over 100 miles an hour, waves 15 metres. We were running away from what we thought was the centre of the storm was. We broke our mast, did a 360, and I broke quite a few bones down the left-hand side of my body. There was a number of times that we looked at each other and we thought, this is the last one, we won't come up from this.
Peter O'Neill was taking part in a Pacific cruise, but had to fight for his life in a storm that turned out much more violent than predicted. He endured 2.5 days in agony before he was finally winched to safety. Peter was successfully rescued, but 3 people did die in that terrible storm. The problem for New Zealand's weather forecasters is that they face one huge disadvantage.
Well, the problem of forecasting in New Zealand, we have New Zealand here, and to the southwest we have a huge expanse of ocean, and again, all ocean between ourselves and Australia, and to the north up into the Pacific Islands. And what we require for good forecast, we require good information. We have good satellite information, but we do need good ground-based information as well.
Of course, storms do show up on satellite photos, but key facts about how bad they are and where they're heading next are only really reliable when you have temperature and pressure readings at sea level. The New Zealand Met Office can get some information about conditions on the Earth's surface by using floating weather buoys like this. The trouble with these buoys is, though, that they have to be dropped in this vast ocean by commercial ships. They don't just stay in one place, and they cannot be controlled. Enter the solar boat Goodwill. Unlike anything before, she can be pre-programmed to sit in an exact position thousands of miles offshore. She's completely unmanned, her solar panels powering an electrically driven propeller. She leaves port under her own steam and navigates using the Global Positioning Satellite System. She could soon have equipment on board to send continuous weather information back to the eagerly waiting Met Office. Her proud designer is Peter Thomas.
I've always had an interest in boats and the sea. I've had boats most of my life. And I got to thinking, why does it cost so much to gather data from the oceans? And I came to the conclusion that it would be possible to build an unmanned craft with solar panels and a global positioning system that could go out and gather that data much more cheaply than we could with using a manned craft.
But why has Peter made his boat such an extraordinary shape?
When the sun's low in the sky, we're getting a lot of solar energy there. If the panels were flat, we'd hardly be getting anything in the early morning and late evening.
Now, supposing the sun packs up, lots of cloud, lots of filthy weather, how does it get its power then?
OK, well, it's got a energy management system on the boat, so most of the power is used by the propulsion system, so it simply turns down the shaft speed. But we've got a separate battery to take over all the essential services for weeks, if necessary.
So whatever happens, constant weather information will be sent back to shore. Well, isn't he going to tip over and be upside down?
Well, if a big wave does come and turn it over, it turns itself back up the right way again.
Are you sure? Well, let's test it then. Come on, let's try.
OK, give it a go.
Here we go. Tip, yes? Go on then. And stay down if you can. No, it's righting itself. Amazing. So Goodwill can keep afloat, but can she really find her own way across the oceans? We've set her a special challenge to find these 2 points marked by buoys, and she seems to be doing well. Heading direct for the buoy, very impressive.
There she goes, there she goes.
Now, Peter, once she's got to the place that you want to put her, how does she stay there?
The rudder, normally, rudder works like this, yes. But when it gets there, the rudder opens up like a book.
Goodwill may drift, but after half a mile, she'll automatically motor back to her set position. But today, she's been pre-programmed to keep on going to the second buoy, and she's not hanging about. On average, she travels at 4 knots and covers 120 miles a day. And she's passed the test, gliding smoothly round the second buoy. If Goodwill can repeat this performance out at sea, she could soon be helping make thousands of miles of dangerous ocean a far more predictable place. Once she completes her vital work, she should also be able to find her way home automatically. But for now, the only way back to port is at the end of a tow rope. Well, the New Zealand Met Office are keeping a close eye on Goodwill's trials, and there's also interest from Japan to help in the prediction of tidal waves.
Bringing back extinct animals sounds like something from Jurassic Park, but actually the idea for the film was inspired by a real project in South Africa, run perhaps surprisingly by a taxidermist. He's attempting to recreate a creature known as the quagga, last seen over 100 years ago. I've been to see some of the first foals born in this remarkable venture. The Karoo National Park in South Africa is a haunting, arid landscape that's now a peaceful haven for the plains zebra. But its past is tinged with blood. Once this similar-looking animal called the quagga also used to live in the Karoo. These strange creatures, looking like a mixture between a horse and a zebra, used to roam these plains in vast herds. But then along came the hunters and drove them to extinction over 100 years ago. Paintings of the animal reveal the ruthlessness of its extermination and give tantalising clues about its appearance. The quagga was brown in colouring and with no striping on its legs and along its rear. But it was an actual stuffed skin of the animal that gave one man the vital evidence that he needed to pursue his dream and bring the animal back to life. Reinhold Rau is the head taxidermist at the South African Museum in Cape Town. He suspects that bringing the quagga back into existence might just be possible.
Right. Okay.
While restoring one of the few remaining preserved quagga here at the museum, Reinhold made a significant discovery. He noticed that preserved tissue still remained under the skin of the extinct animal. So in theory, its DNA could be extracted from this and examined to see if it matched the existing plains zebra.
If you look at southern populations of the plains zebra of today, you see individuals which have very striking similarities to the quagga, either in reduced striping or color.
The preserved quagga tissue gave him just a fragment of DNA to analyse, but it was enough to test out his theory. The DNA analysis proved Reinhold's suspicions. It was exactly the same as that of the flourishing plains zebra. Now this meant that the quagga wasn't a separate species, but a subspecies. So, in theory, Reinhold could bring the quagga back to life by selectively breeding those plains zebra with the most quagga-like characteristics. Reinhold is now on a mission and is looking at zebra all over Africa. He's selecting animals to breed that are browner in colour and have less striping on the rear and legs.
Here we have 4 animals which were caught in the wild. This mare and also this mare, quite obviously for their much reduced striping on the hind leg, while the stallion was selected more for the brownish tint he has got. despite a rather heavy striping. And then we just have to get them to breed, and from their offspring, again select the most suitable animals.
Reinhold awaits the birth of each foal with excitement to see if its markings have come closer to those of the quackers. I'm off with him to see a new foal that's just been born outside Cape Town. So this is your first look at a new foal, a few days old?
3 days old, I think it is, yeah, or 2 days.
Gorgeous though it is, the foal doesn't look much like a quacker.
Obviously a little bit disappointing in a way.
Is it?
Although from that stallion, which we caught not for its striping but for its brownish color, one can't really expect a foal which has tremendously less stripes than him. And so the foal, unfortunately, is definitely, as far as striping is concerned, by far not as good as its mother.
This is partly because the foal is only the first generation of offspring. Reinhold believes it may take 2 or more generations of breeding, in other words, this foal's grandchildren, before the quagga-like features appear. And to prove his theory, he takes me to the slopes of Table Mountain, which are home to another family of plains zebra that he's just been breeding for 2 generations. They've produced a foal called Etienne. What's so significant about Etienne?
Well, if you compare his striping to his mother, you see that his body stripes are so much narrower and also more reduced than the mother. That is really the most surprising thing. With each year now, I guess, results will become more and more exciting, which means we will see animals being born which are even closer to the quagga than what we have so far.
Etienne is definitely a quagga in the making, and the closest that Reinhold has come yet to breeding back the animal. However, with more than 50 carefully selected plain zebra spread across the Cape, it could be any day now that a new generation of quagga is born.
What's all this I hear about the first foal being named after you?
Well, they had to call it Philip, not Philippa, because it's a male, but it's an honour.
And that's just about it. Before we go, a quick update of the BBC's Webwise campaign with Tomorrow's World, helped launch 2 weeks ago.
The campaign has had a phenomenal response, with 100,000 people phoning about attending free web taster sessions, even my dad.
If you'd like to find out more about using the internet, there's still time. Sessions run to June the 4th, and to sign up, you call 0800 100 900. That's 0800 100 900.
Do join us next week when we'll be reporting on a major breakthrough, the artificial liver machine that's already saving lives.
And I get a sneak preview of the gigantic British catamaran, aiming to smash the record for sailing around the world.
Don't miss it. Bye.
Bye.
Paint and polish. Next tonight on BBC One, a family with a life in shoes is changing rooms.